Yeah, sure. I suppose just to begin with the farm attack issue, as it's seen from, I would say, America, there's a sort of far, far, far right view that actually would like to see farmers get attacked and suffer a so-called genocide, because that would then sort of very fringe groups say would then radicalize white Americans. So you've got on the very far fringes a sort of that sort of view. Then I think on the right you've got people learn about this problem which has blighted post-apartheid South Africa, which is the violence against farmers, which reached its sort of highest intensity in the late 90s, early 2000s, and it's generally shocking what was happening. And I think Trump must have clearly heard about it at some point, and it stuck with him, and so he actually feels strongly about it. And then on the other side, you've got the sort of race conscious left in America, and they see white farmers as the sort of embodiment of the colonial oppressor or whatever, and they find it morally objectionable that farmers today are seen as still white farmers still own the land that they do, although their figures are all wrong, but still they feel passionately that that's a historic injustice that needs to be redressed, and they share in a way a similar view to the ANC, the EFF, and MK. So that's the sort of context. Now, I think in America there's a tendency to always try and reach for the genocide comparison. So you read about this horrific sort of form of crime in post-apartheid South Africa, and then you reach for the comparison to genocide. It's not applicable. In fact, it's very rarely. It's such a rare crime that one shouldn't actually use it at all. And it applies, and it usually happens in certain circumstances. One is a war situation. So it's just the wrong, if you're going to calibrate what you're describing, it's totally the wrong measure. So then what happens is people use this inappropriate measure. They say, look, there's a 100-foot giant, walking through the land. And the person who's walking through the land is an 8-foot person, and maybe he's the tallest person who's ever walked, but he's not 100-foot. And then of course what happens is the other side, which is the sort of more the left-wing side, sort of seizes on the white genocide idea, and it reports on this obsessively, because obviously it's not true. And it's a total exaggeration. But by reporting on the exaggeration, you then diminish the reality, and you pretend that there's been no problem at all. And so you avoid speaking about an actual problem. And what currently has happened is the numbers, whether it's correlation or causation, the numbers of farm attacks, and the victims now are very multiracial of those attacks, have come right down under the sort of harsh glare that Elon Musk and Trump have put on the problem. So then when Trump uses very, very sort of inaccurate language, saying the slaughter is sort of ongoing, it sort of discredits the whole issue, and it allows people to then go off again from the left, talking about white genocide and how it's a total fiction. And as long as that conversation occurs, you don't actually have to talk about the real problem. And for just ordinary people who are sort of watching this tennis match of this ball getting hit back and forth, it then creates this, you have this crying wolf problem, that people stop believing anything, and they start thinking that this is a real fiction, that this is just a fiction and nothing ever happened, it's totally made up or whatever. So I think that's more or less to sum up the issue. I mean, obviously there's a lot more one can say, but I think we're under very restricted time.
We should in the future talk about the data itself and what it shows, and we're looking very carefully at that now. and will produce. I'm certain we will produce estimates of exactly what the position is with regards to farm attacks and farm killings and what the trends have been. And I think we've seen enough to give you an overhead. Farmers are far more likely to be attacked than the average for the general population, if you compare armed home invasion robberies, for example. We're pretty certain on the data for that now. We're also pretty certain on the data that an attack on a farmer is more likely to end in a homicide, in a murder, than in a similar violent attack across the broader population. So farmers are more likely to be attacked. Data says that. They are more likely to, those attacks are more likely to end in homicides. We're certain on that. We're certain on another thing as well, that black commercial farmers, of which there are a growing number, are as likely to be attacked as their white counterparts. So in as far as it has been suggested in some of the American communication that this is a problem that afflicts whites, we think that is completely false in the main. Next thing we'd say is that South Africa's murder rate overall is at the moment about 44 or 45 per 100,000. So that means that 44, 45 people in the country are murdered every year for every 100,000 people that are present in the country. And you may ask yourself, is that a lot or a little? Well, I'll tell you, Australia's number is about 1. The number in the United States is usually about 5 or 6 or 7. So the entire quantum of South African society is orders of magnitude more likely to be violently attacked and murdered relative to the averages for the rest of the world. And it's an issue, therefore. We can have an argument about who's more likely to be attacked, and that is important. Some people might be more than others. But to turn that into a kind of victimhood Olympics, when across the whole of the society there's this daily slaughter being carried out, is not the right way to do it. Because it's that collective fear and understanding of violent crime that actually unites South Africa. It's a one experience. If you're black, white, rich or poor, that you probably have in exactly the same way, is the sense that you might be violently attacked in your home and murdered. And it's the kind of thing that should therefore be applied from a political perspective to actually bring the society together. To point to the outrageous nature of it, the complete failure of the state to safeguard its citizens. And it's what makes James's contribution here today so very important, that if you misstate the nature of the threat, you allow people who wish to say there is nothing wrong at all to do that and to get away with that. More so for the fact that it is the collective experience of all South Africans that they suffer terribly from serious and violent crime. And you get what I'm saying to you. So there you go, Gabriel.